Hello, folks. Welcome. My name is Doug Fink, and today we're going to talk about AI agents in PowerShell, turning GitHub CLI into an autonomous workflow engine. So, based on some of the questions, let's take a look at. So, if you want to get started, okay, what you need is you can do an install module. Uh, this all works in PowerShell, so you need to have PowerShell installed. It works on Linux and Mac. Um, You have that installed, and then you can install my module. There's a built into PowerShell something called install-module. You do it on PSAI, pulls it from the gallery. You need to go to OpenAI. Right now, this one works with either Azure, where you have to do a bunch of setup, which I won't show you, but it's on the GitHub repo. But you get an OpenAI key, and there's a link to go get that. You put $5 on a credit card. It only goes as you pay as you go. So if you run out of $5, it doesn't charge you anymore, no runaway charges. You grab a key from them, and then you can set in your environment the $ENV OpenAI key, and you're off to the races. Bonus points, if you want, you can install the PSAI suite that I have. It connects to 15 different providers. So the top one only connects to OpenAI. The PSAI suite connects to that, but it also connects to Gemini, connects to Anthropic, Meta, Nubius, which is a platform, OpenRouter, all kinds of, even Olama. So pick what you like, and then you can check things out. So Kenneth asked, can we connect your framework to any agent framework? So you'd want to connect this framework to something like, I don't know, LangChain or something. All those other ones are written in, most of them are written in Python, some in TypeScript. So there's no direct capability that can be done. My guess is that since you're using a Python or a TypeScript, you can call out and shell out to PowerShell. So you could integrate. You would have to take those extra steps to integrate that stuff. Like I don't think LangChain can talk to the semantic kernel, which is a .NET framework. So technically you can, but I don't think anybody has. And depending on what software you use to get your job done or you're comfortable with, choosing a programming space that has the least amount of friction is typically the best. Yes, I will be putting this up. Well, I'm going to put up snippets on the YouTube, and if you be great, if you want to head it over there, you can actually subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's the link, and it'd be great. You can hit the notification, and you'll know when I drop stuff. I will drop snippets of what I'm doing today on YouTube and on the different social media. My X, where I am on X as well as on LinkedIn, and you can see the snippets that I'm going to post about what we're talking today. What else specifically? So that's the answer about YouTube. Kenneth asked specifically for Claude Agent SDK, which has support for Python and JS. Right. So Claude and Codex from OpenAI typically have support for both TypeScript and the others. They use something called Zod, Z-O-D, to do their object approach so they can communicate to each other. Yeah. I don't have any specific things that can connect into PowerShell, and I haven't really looked at how Claude Agent SDK works with. I don't. Can you have one instance of what Claude does and have either Python or JavaScript agents, or do you have to write in JavaScript to get to the JavaScript agents and Python to get to the Python agents? That's a question. I don't know the answer to that. I assume that that's what they do. The only one that I see is being able to talk across agents is Google with I think it's called Agent Developer Kit, the ADK, because that uses a different and separate protocol to make that happen. They don't integrate the languages. They just set up two engines or two instances, one of JavaScript, one of Python, and then there's a way that you can communicate between them. But definitely reach out to me, and happy to talk more about what you're looking to do with Claude or any of the other ones, and see if I can make it happen with the PowerShell integration. The more integration, the better. So you can use Claude in your business logic as opposed to using Claude code over your code base. Yeah, makes sense. And that's what I've built with PowerShell emulates that stuff because I can do agents and all that kind of those pieces. So you can, while it's not as full featured as Claude. You can run this over your code base. You can run it my stuff headless, so you can run it as business logic in your code if you do that kind of stuff. I typically run it like in Azure Functions or AWS Lambdas because I can load up, PowerShell on a Linux instance and run this toolkit. And the same thing with GitHub Actions. Yep. So I hear what you're saying, and yeah, well, more options the better. Um, So just as a note, we're going to be seeing something called that I have this that talks about that does the actual new agent stuff. And just as you know, so next week, same time, same place, I'm going to show you how to build a PowerShell agent from scratch. Meaning, I'm not going to show you there won't be any toolkits. I'm not going to use my stuff. I'm going to show you how you tap into the REST endpoints in OpenAI, which are similar, pretty much almost at this point only Google and Anthropic have tweaked their back-end REST endpoints, which is not hard to accommodate. But I'll show you how to build an agent from here's how you build a chatbot, here's how you build memory, here's how you build function calling so you can get the agent behavior. And we go from 10 lines of code to maybe less than 50 to get all this done. And it's a real insight. Once you see how it's done, you see the magic trick. At first, you might say, well, building agents is an impossible thing. Once you see and understand the mechanics, the spell breaks. So I think I know it's been an eye opener for me, and hopefully it will be for you. Cool. So if you have any questions, just feel free to drop it into chat, and I will answer them as we go. All right. So we're talking about GitHub and whatnot. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. And if I did, we'll cover it again. All right. So how many type of one if so this is going to be, I don't know where people are in their experience with GitHub and whatnot. So if you type of one, if you've used the GitHub CLI. So what I mean by that is, so we got at least excellent. A bunch of people have used it. Sweet. Once. Excellent. Well, so if you're in GitHub, right? If you like here, I'm going to be using my try stuff. That's where I do all my experimentation. Once I use GitHub only for Copilot. Oh, excellent. For the Copilot, you'll be interested in this as well. So we'll do a little bit of the Copilot code agent that they have. That's kind of what got me into doing this live stream today. I've been using Copilot agent on that side for a while, but so if you're doing things like if I'm in try stuff, which is a repo I made, it's got a bunch of stuff. And if I want to go into issues, I can click on the new button and it comes up and I can create a title and I can create we have a bug in the thing and I can give it a whole bunch of descriptions. I can, be real like, hey, we should take a look at it, or I can explain exactly the return codes and whatnot. And this is how issues get tracked. Well, with GitHub at the command line, okay, if I type in GH, it'll give me a list of what it can do. And it can work with, I can browse repos. I can spin up code spaces, which are basically Docker images. I can manage issues, create them, close them, all kinds of different things. I can do the same thing with pull requests, GitHub Actions, all kinds of things with the GitHub CLI. What are other GitHub clients? Yep. Rich hit it. There's the CLI, there's the GitHub desktop. And oops, what else we got here? Yep, GitHub desktop. I tend to like to stay out of the UI. I'm a CLI person, but that's just my preference. I'm not here to sell you on a CLI, but I'll do all my demos mostly in CLIs. So if you're working inside of GitHub, you can do all kinds of different things. I can go into the pull request. I can do a new pull request, right? I can look at the code that's in here. I can add files all from the UI. If you're familiar with how Git works, right? What does CLI mean? So that stands for command line interface. So right now, when you see me typing here on the screen, like I can type GH. I'm actually communicating through the CLI to actually execute the GitHub CLI. And that's what that is. Cool. Well, you can make repos in repo, you can do everything. You can do many, many, many things from the CLI. So what that does, it opens up lots of opportunities for automation, and then blending that into AI gets really interesting. So I can create issues, I can create pull requests, I can kick off actions, and I can do all of this stuff from the web page, or I can do it by checking in code, and I can have GitHub Actions anyway. So typically, one of the ways that I like to work, um, create automation for repos. Excellent. Well, I don't know about creating. Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of something different, not just creating the repos, which I think will be useful. But the other thing is that I'm going to show you a bunch of things. And don't just think that this is limited. I'm going to show you how to do it with GitHub, but you don't have to limit it to GitHub. If you have something like AZ CLI, right? So the Azure CLI, or the way AWS works with its endpoints, or maybe you have a CLI that does stuff with, let's say, Jira, or other ones that your company or you have made over time. These concepts will travel to be able to work with AI and whatnot. So, for example, I'm going to use my repo defink try stuff, and if I wanted to list all the issues in there, which I have none, so I can paste that, and you can see that I have no issues, right? But this just actually went up as if I went to the web page and clicked on issues and looked for my issues. Okay. Now, if I want, I can, from the command line, I can create an issue. I can give it the repo. I'm going to create an issue called sample issue title, something really easy, and a body of this is a sample issue body. So when I run that, tells me that it created it, gives me the now if I control click on it, okay. Remember before I had no issues created. So now I just did that at the command line, and okay, cool. So I have that. Now I find this super useful because sometimes I just keep track of the issues I want in a text file. Now, if I'm doing this with a command line capability in PowerShell, if I wanted to, I could crack open a file and I could have each line in my text file being a different issue and a title, and I can just loop through that, and then I can create all those kind of issues. Fine. Now, what else can I do? Now, let's say I wanted to grab the last issue, or I want to grab the first issue, actually. I have 1 or 100 in there. I'm going to grab the first issue, and I'm going to convert it to JSON. So GitHub CLI has an ability where you can bring everything back as a piece of JSON. And in PowerShell, I can convert that JSON by using convert from JSON commandlet, and then I can select the first one. And now we can see this hopefully as so there's a number and title of what I just created. And at the command line, I can then say, well, I want to close it, right? So now I'm typing it rather than, going up here to the repo. We'll see now I should have no issues, right? Because I just closed that issue. I can search for all issues, and there's the one I just closed. And I have keeps track of everything when I closed it and all that kind of good stuff. So I could do this all manually. Maybe I come in and I'm managing or part of a bigger project, and I need to go in and close all my issues and put a bunch of stuff, or maybe I just need to close all the bugs, and maybe not give an update because I've already done the updates as I went, and I just need to close them now for, let's say, the sprint is over. Whatever kind of workflow you're in, and there's ways to do this as I can mark all kinds of. Let's create another issue. You can do this lots of different ways. And I can select this and I can say mark it as open or closed or completed, or I can do it all through automation. So this is one way, right? So I can list them, I can create an issue, and I can close issues. Nice. Well, let's kick it up a notch. Now, if I wanted, what I like to do is I don't like to be, let's open this again, and we'll open this. So what I don't, being able to do this, I can type these out all day long, but I'm much more comfortable having things like functions in PowerShell like new GitHub issue, get GitHub issues, and close. And I can pass in a bunch of parameters, right? So I can simplify how I interact with GitHub. I can say new GitHub issue, space, defink, try stuff, space. I don't have to spell out the hyphen repos and all that kind of good stuff. Let's see, we got a question. I didn't see it in the options. Just what do we got? Didn't see which in the options. You don't want to make manual repos. Why not? Question from Kenneth, is the next level from this to have agent call these tools automatically? There you go. So we're on the same page, Kenneth. Right. So now what I'm going to do is now I can have these three functions to do a new issue, a get GitHub issue, and close. It does two things. One, I have a simplified way of thinking about it. I don't have to think about GH space issue space create or GH space issue close and then pass a number. I can use regular function calls that I'm comfortable with, like close GitHub issue, the name of the repository, and the issue number. Now, if I was going to do this manually and build this out as a piece of code, I would still have to get the issues, right? Convert it to a JSON so I could then individually grab the issue number or parse that piece of text to say, hey, did I keep the issue or did I, right? Let's see if I can do a GitHub list issue. So this is the way, well, I'm going to do it one more time and then we will get the issues, right? So this is the way it comes back. I would have to parse this because it's from GitHub CLI, as in most Unix type or Go type programs. GitHub CLI is written in Go. It comes back as it manages the layout itself. And I'd have to parse that. That's one of the reasons why they let you bring it back as a repo, as a piece of JSON. We'll get rid of all this good stuff just to take a look. So I can get it back as JSON, so I can then use it in JSON parsers, which then turns them into objects, and then I can go after the properties like number and title. Now, if I'm using these new functions, I'd have to still do that, but we're going to throw some agent stuff into it. Is it possible to label issues? Absolutely. So if you type in GH issue, let's see what right? If I don't give it any arguments, it gives me the help. And yeah, so if you see, here's one of the examples. When I create an issue, I can assign a label, a hyphen label bug. All good. Yeah, so pretty much the CLI is on par with the GitHub, what you can do in the screen and what you can do with the Git straight away using Git command line. Add label bug. Thank you, Charles. Perfect. I think you beat me to that. Now, the key thing here is I'm showing you this all in GitHub, but let your mind wander, have some imagination, and think about, well, what other kind of things can I do with? And I'll, show you what you can do. Now, the key thing is I am wrapping everything inside of a PowerShell function, right? That's important. So now that I have the new GitHub issue, get GitHub issues, and close, and in my get GitHub issue, I'm just getting a list. I'm getting the raw list, right? I'm not even converting it to a parsable or a more simple parsable way. I'm not converting it to PowerShell objects. I'm not converting it to JSON, so I can then convert it to PowerShell objects. I'm just getting the raw text like this, okay? So let's see, have to drop for a work meeting. All right, Susan, thanks for coming out. Excellent. Maybe see you next week. So now let's take it the next step, right? So we see how we can do it by hand, how we typically always use it. We could actually wrap up the right-hand side here inside of a PowerShell PS1 and do a bunch of stuff to make our life easier. And now I'm going to wrap it inside of functions and take it to the next level. Can I use agents to make games using Python? That's a little bit off track, but yes, you can. So you can also use all the web interfaces to do that as well. So now what I'm going to do is, now that I've created all these functions, and that's, if you want to use my toolkit, they have to be functions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use new agent, and I'm going to do show tool calls, and that's going to show me. So as I'm prompting it, I will be able to see what the agent is telling I'm going to be able to see what the AI model tells new agent, what it should call, and the parameters that it needs to set and what the values are. And what I'm going to do is pass in under tools, I'm going to pass in new GitHub issue, get GitHub issues, and close GitHub issue. Those are the ones I built up here that all wrap the CLI. So it's not that much work, and we're just kind of setting up the scaffolding to make this happen. Okay, Matt, we're going to really focus on the GitHub stuff at this point, how they talk to each other. That's out of scope, and that's something for another live stream. So new GitHub issue, get GitHub issues, close GitHub issue. And then by passing it into tools, there's stuff that I do under the covers to actually translate these function names and the parameters and the data types. So it's created as a function calling JSON schema. And if you come next week, I'm going to show you exactly how that gets built out. It's relatively simple. The last demo I'll do on that day will show the full 9 yards, and it's maybe 50 lines of code, but we'll step up into each one of them. Is it cleaner to have modules or stick to functions? Doesn't matter. It's your preference. If you use functions like this, the challenge, one of the reasons modules are great is that you have isolation, right? So if I have 2 modules with dollar count in them, because modules get created into their own namespace, so to speak, the dollar count won't get updated if they're in their separate models, in their separate modules. In here, those things you can have collisions. So it all depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to just knock it out, I use PS1s. If I think it's what I'm building is gonna live, I'll typically take it into a PSM1, which is simple enough because all I got to do, I can just rename this get close PS1 to put an M in there to name it .psm1, do a import module, and I'm good to go. It's one of the beauties of PowerShell. Less ceremony, more essence. So where are we? All right, questions are good. Now, we're going to do new agent. I'm going to watch the tools get called, and I'm passing in the 3 functions that I created. Each one of them are wrapping a different GitHub CLI approach. And part of my stuff, all right, cool, PSM1. Did you know that, Rich? That's I mean, I know you know about PSM1s, but yeah. Then the next step is just name it a PSM1, do import module, and you're off to an isolated namespace. Cool. Yeah, that was a fun one. Now, the thing is that when I run, let's see if we do it here. Yeah, I'm going to run new agent with, it's not going to work. Let me just load up the functions. Awesome. Now I can find them. So now when I do new agent, we can see tool calls is true. And we can see the tools have been set. Now they look like a hash table. So I have something called dump JSON, which is part of the PSAI. And we can take a look at, this is what the schema looks like that all AI models expect at minimum. Okay. Anthropic has taken it the next level with MCPs, but it's based on this with a few extra added pieces. So this is, if you want to play in the world of agents, doesn't matter if you're doing it in PowerShell or what language. If you want to be in that game, if you want to own the loop and all kinds of good stuff or understand it more deeply, this is what gets done. So in tools, I have something that actually cracks open functions and then translates it into these goodies. Again, I've been using it for a couple of years and it's more than solid. Okay. So basically, by doing this, new agent is just a configuration about tools and whatnot that needs to happen for when we do the magical start conversation. And that'll put us into a chat mode with the AI. So Kenneth says, does a new agent need to load functions to use them, or can JSON MD load the functions? Why? To create another separation of concerns via theme. Right now, so if you have to have it in a module, or the actual function has to be defined and run before new agent is done, because it searches the namespace, so to speak. It searches the PowerShell environment. But Yeah, talking about markdowns, I do have, I don't mean to go too off track here, but let's take Claude, let's take Claude Skills, for example, where it does progressive disclosure. So I, in a weekend and a day, was able to mirror their Claude Skills as power. So, because it only uses calls bash and Python and whatnot. So I said, oh, I looked at it and I'm like, that makes total sense. And I replicated it inside PowerShell with my module. So you don't have to load up the stuff because depending on how you define it in fence blocks inside of the Markdown, it will, if you build it correctly, it will actually instantiate what you need so that it's ready and available for when the agent interaction has to happen. So, but that's a good question, Kenneth, because this thing has lots of ways that this can go, right? So, but that's a good set of thinking for the next set of steps. So now, so new agent doesn't do anything on its own. So if you come up here and you say, well, let's start a conversation, cool. And what that does, you can see I am now in what I call an AI REPL, meaning read, eval, print loop. So I can start typing in here, right? And I can say, what tools do you have? So I'm now interacting with passing a prompt, and new agent is saying, okay, I'm going to pass that prompt back up to the model. The model has, because I did the tools, has a description of all the tools I want it to work with. It doesn't execute these functions. It will tell the new agent to execute them. So when I ask what it has, it goes, okay, here's what we got. Create, get, close, and it spells everything out, nice English information. Now I'm going to say use defink, try stuff. Now take a look. Typically when you do things with GitHub, you need a forward slash, right? You would need this for the slug, defink forward slash try stuff. But I'm not going to do it. Let's see what it does. So that goes up to the model. The model determines, well, based on what I'm, oh, very nice. You're going to make a, you're going to mess me up already. Um, that's great. So I'm not sure why that happened, but that's okay. We can talk about it. I just said use defink, try stuff, and said, hey, call GitHub issues, right? That's up here. Is it the, oops, call the new GitHub issues. And it said, let's get the right one. And it knew that it has one parameter, and it said, here's what the value to the parameter is. And it sets it up, and it figures out and says, oh, you're dealing with GitHub. I'm going to correctly use the owner forward slash repo. Well, I wouldn't call it a failing demo. So this is a very simple set of agents. It used it properly. There you go. Actually, I kind of like that it did the new GitHub issue. I'm not quite sure why, but one of the cool things about New Agent is you can also put on it, there's a thing called instructions. Again, I did not put any guardrails on this, but when I set up my instructions, I can tell it just answer the questions that are you're asked. Don't use anything destructive. If you do have to do something like remove, close, whatnot, make sure you prompt me when I do it. So that's all doable all through natural language. You don't have to program. You don't have to write a programmatic component. So you give it the set of functions you want, and you can control these things through a prompt or through the set of instructions, what they call a system prompt, right? Which makes this thing very flexible. Now, I don't know why that did that, which is fine, but we can see um, that it found the issue I created, and then it created another one, and I can actually control click, and let's see if I can get up to GitHub. Now I have two issues, and here's the new issue example. All good. Now notice all I did was say use use that repo. All right. I didn't tell it what to call. I didn't tell it how to call it. I didn't have to know about new GitHub issue, right? I'm just a basic user. Now let's do some other interesting things. Now I'm going to just say add issue, and you can use whatever language you want, right? This is NLP. This is natural language processing, right? You can misspell things, you can be grammatically incorrect. And since LLMs are that powerful, it'll take your prompt and figure out what you're trying, it'll infer what you're trying to do. Sometimes it does it wrong, depending on how ambiguous you are. But it has that kind of forgiveness. So add an issue, um, need to do TDD for the application. So TDD is test-driven development. So let's see what it does. Now, what's cool is this goes up and it's giving it a title. So it figures out a title and it says need to do test-driven development. So that's when you see the body there, that's actually the LLM taking my prompt here, inferring a bunch of stuff, and then creating the body for me. All right. Well, let's go off to, right. So it created the body that was based on my prompt, and it goes, oh, I'm going to spell out test-driven development, right? This is how I would write it if I was writing a blog post. I would say you need to do test-driven development, parentheses TDD, so people understand what I'm talking about, and then give them the TLA, the three-letter acronym. So that's pretty cool, I think. If you have any questions, let me know. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, let's say I want to just say add a fix, need to fix a bug in the date time. Oops. Okay, so it comes back, it does that. I'm going to come over here. We should have 4 issues. Excellent. And there's the fix. And there's what it spells it out. There's a bug in the functionality. So I'm being very minimalistic in my prompt, but if I gave it a deeper prompt, spell things out, it would give it more direction, and it would then fill out the body itself. So this is, I hope this is kind of illuminating, like, wow, this is what you can do now with just doing some basic prompts. You don't have to know anything about GitHub. The LLM knows nothing about GitHub. It just knows that it has 3 functions: new, whatnot, new, list, and close. So let's take a look at the close. This gets really interesting, I think. Let me know if I'm overly excited. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say add an issue to create a demo for the code and close the oldest issue. All right. What do you think it's going to do? All right. So we got it. And check it out. So it created, and so now I have show tools on. If you don't have that turned on, you won't see the verbose messages. You'll just get the final summary of what it did. So I've created a new issue for the demo, and I successfully closed the oldest issue, 106. So if we come back here, unfortunately, we're not going to see it. I should have kept it up. Oh, there we go. Let's just, that doesn't look, well, that's very sad if that's did what I think it did. So it closed the newest issue, you SOB. So that's really messed up. So I don't know why it's doing that today. So it actually, so this is exactly, so this is why I do this stuff in my try stuff, right? So I see what's going on. This is my evaluation process. Is this doing what I want to? No, it's not. And there's a bunch of things I can tweak. I can tweak the instructions. I can tweak the definitions of the function names and the parameters. So it told me that it closed 102, but in fact it closed 106. And now here's what I'm going to do. But the concept is interesting. All I said was add an issue and close the oldest issue, and AI figured out from that what to do, what functions to call, so it can get enough context to execute and solve the goal that I gave for it. So let's do 2 things. First up, the model that I'm using as a default is GPT-4o Mini, right? So that's an older model, and Mini means that it's going to answer quickly and not be as accurate. So now I'm going to change the model. Don't know what results I'm going to get, but let's see what we can do. So I'm going to do there's an LLM parameter on the new agent, and I'm going to say, well, give me the GPT 4.1. Now, what's also interesting about this, GPT 5.2 just released last week. I didn't have to update the new agent code because everything works based off of strings. So if you type in GPT-5.2 or GPT-4.1 or GPT-3.0 hyphen codex hyphen max, you get access to all those that are available in the OpenAI model. And the PSAI suite that I have also works on that you can switch out different providers and different models all based on a string, basically a moniker, right? So the code and the piece that interacts with the AI model, you can now mix and match the different providers and models at will. There's no you don't have to do surgery on your application, and my new agent doesn't have to take surgery either. Now, let's see what happens. I'm not sure it's going to be the best. And the other thing I would do is I would then update the instructions, right, to say when you're closing things, make sure you do X, make sure you do Y. And what I do is I build up the instructions over time. The instructions can be multiple, and these instructions could be, 2 lines. It could be a paragraph. It could be 3 paragraphs that help steer the actual model itself. So let's go back in. So now I've just updated the model. Question. Temporal logic of actions. Is this what you refer to? TLA? No, 3-letter acronym. Like TDD is a 3-letter TLA. It's a 3-letter acronym. So TDD stands for test-driven development. CLI is a TLA, right? Command line interface, things like that. That's what I was referring to for TLAs. So we've updated the model. Let's try it again. And I'm going to just, let's see if I can do add an issue. Oh, well, let's tell it first off. So now if I ran this, right, I didn't tell it what repo to use. That's another thing I would put in the instructions. Make sure you have a repo that you're using. If not, don't use the local one, and prompt the user saying that they should use provide a repo. So I'm going to say using. Now let's see if it actually creates an issue like it did last time. I don't think it will. Use defink. Now this is interesting because now I have a smarter model, but it's going to be a little more pedantic. Oh, it's going to be a wonderful. I can help you with list. I'm going to say, so let's do this. Use defink for all ops. And I'm going to say, add a new issue to create a demo. And this worked great earlier today, and close. Now, again, at this point, I would be capturing a bunch of instructions that I would see that I would need to give it. Okay. So AI is not a silver bullet, but you can see already from just giving it a bunch of functions what you can do. And by just giving it NLP in a set of instructions, that you can actually steer this thing into some really amazing behavior. So add a new issue, create a demo, add a new issue, create a demo, and close the oldest issue. So hopefully you'll get this. So, okay, so now it knows how to use that, created a new issue, and it closed issue number 103. Let's see what we have. Go back into issues. Here's the new one, create a demo. Awesome. And it closed, yep, 103 was the oldest one. So what that demonstrates is, so 4.0 mini, it's just what I use as a default. It's cheaper, faster, whatnot. But if I start running into the issues that you just saw, I switch out models. Okay. And if I get to a certain point where this thing is really not doing nice things, I'll go to GPT-5.2. Now, what happens there is it's going to be longer. It's going to take longer time to do its thing because it's a reasoning model. Okay. And it's a little bit more expensive. And when I say more expensive, it's more like, well, instead of costing 0.0001 penny, it costs 0.003 pennies. But if you're doing bazillion amounts of here's 500 PDFs, look across them, summarize them, give me a new legal document, then you can start running into some serious costs. But for these kind of things that are super helpful, making it a teammate, using 5.2 to get the certain kinds of behavior is absolutely worth the 0.0001 penny. So anyway, so we had a little bit of an issue. I used an older model. I wouldn't say an issue. It had a behavior I didn't like. I could have given it instructions to say, hey, listen, make sure you always look for the proper issue number. But I decided to up the LLM. So this really begins to show you the flavor of new agent in this PowerShell framework. And all the other frameworks do the same thing. They give you the abilities to switch between providers and all that kind of stuff. It's a it's the opening ante that if you want to write these types of things, or if you're going to inspect and research any kind of agent framework, these are the things you want to look for. What happens when, like today, I think, so I have something called in the PSAI suite, get open. Let's see if I can do this. Open router model last week. So now I'm just looking at all the different models that came out in the last few days. So here's OpenAI dropped 5.2. Xiaomi just dropped, I don't know what company that is. NVIDIA yesterday dropped Nemotron, which is amazing. And just today, Allen AI dropped Olmo, right? And all these things are now workable and usable within the AI frameworks. And things like LangChain, or I don't know if Semantic Kernel allows this. I don't know if the AI Foundry that's in Azure have access to these kind of things, but you can get to these models and use them. The challenge is they all the models are tuned for different things. So again, I wouldn't use the latest Nemotron to do this kind of stuff. I would have to experiment a little bit, and then that would get us into discussions about evals and error analysis of what these things can do. This is not a silver bullet, but you can get to certain parts and do some really amazing things with very little work. So Kenneth, excellent writing paragraphs. I think you are ahead of the curve with PS. We can abstract out all of our tools, MCP servers, tools implemented in other languages, and even other agents behind the functions and modules, and even commandlets. This will save tons of context tokens, as new agent only needs to call a function, and said function launches whatever, and assets stored in 1000% correct. And just a point on MCPs, I wrote a MCP client, which means I could host other MCP servers in PowerShell. And as Claude Skills came out, because now they're going to change MCPs to do more like Claude Skills, where you do progressive disclosure and you reduce the context. So this whole thing is in complete, beautiful flux. You don't have to worry about it depending on what you're doing, but these benefits are coming. 2026 is going to be off the hook. And yes, and the only reason that my thing does this is because I ported this code from OpenAI back in 2023, and I followed what they did in Python, and I was like, oh, this looks really cool. I have no idea what function calling is, but I'm going to build it and I'll figure it out. And I don't think they really knew what were doing, because it took them almost several months to start communicating about it. And that's when Anthropic said, oh, we can take that, tweak it, make it MCPs. And then they're like, oh, we can take it a step further, make it progressive disclosure so you don't use that much context, and on and on and on the game goes. So 2026 is going to be even crazier. And I don't think the APIs are going to change, the REST APIs. So they're just going to be building new conceptualizations that we can learn from and then either use, and I'll be doing it because I like putting my hands on the knobs and the dials. But if you're not comfortable building this kind of stuff, you can always go to a LangChain or the ADK from Google, or you can grab Microsoft's semantic kernel and so on. So Adil says, is PSAI suite compatible with Olama and local LLMs? Absolutely. So we'll go back to here to the CLI, the TLA, and I will say get chat providers. So this is out of the PSAI suite. Those are the different, those are the providers I support. You can add your own. It's just a bunch of PowerShell code to enable another type of provider. You can see here, there's one called Inception. It came out relatively new. Do I have the other one? Nubius? Yeah. And then this one's even newer. And then if you looked at how the code works, I use what they call a strategy pattern. So there's just some basic differences between the REST endpoints and the different things you set in the JSON payload. And then you can set up your own provider if you wanted to. So yeah. And then I have Olama. So if you set up Olama, it's all good to go. You can then use what you want. Rich says, I believe it is. Yep. Moving forward with Foundry, Unify, CUDA models. Absolutely. I'll make an issue for, oh yeah. Yeah, definitely please make an issue, Rich. That's, it was on my list of things to do. I put it in my to-do notes. Yeah, I wanted to see how well it played out. Richard, could you use this to communicate with Google Notebook? Damn, we're going. So we only, okay, I'm going to go a little late because there's one piece I definitely want to show. But yeah, let's go talk about Google. So that's the whole thing. Google does some really cool stuff. I love the Google Notebook pieces. I'll show you something that I just built, and I will drop it into. This will does not work with Google Notebook. I don't know. I don't even can Google Notebook run as I don't think it has an API. So then it becomes down to, and I don't mean to be, you know, squirrely. It all depends on what you're trying to do in Google Notebook. Are you trying to leverage, what they're doing? You know, like, are you trying to leverage the fact that they can create all the audio stuff? Yeah. So there'd be a bunch of reverse engineering. Google does really interesting things, but they certain parts they just leave behind. They make it so it's not accessible. It only works within their tools. Nano Banana is not one of them. They make that available. And so as we're talking about all this, this is one of the patterns that I keep seeing. So I decided to um, just I'll drop this in the check this out when you want. That's one of my GitHub repos that I just put it up yesterday, I guess. And intent first AI. So if you can you see this like infographic? I built this with I did this with Notebook LM. I was having a bunch of discussions with one of the LLMs, and I was talking about like this is what I'm seeing. These are the patterns I'm seeing. What do you think? What's this? What's that? You know, and I'm seeing an inversion of responsibility. And so then I gave it to it, and then it came up with this infographics. It talks about here's how we used to do it, where we as users have to translate things from specs into steps, and now we're actually putting that burden onto the AI, where we tell it, here's a bunch of tools, you infer everything and see what we come up with. And you can see how fast the LLM figured out from 3 functions what to do with a GitHub setup. Okay, so go check that out. This is the pattern that I'm seeing. And I think I actually put the GitHub piece in there. Yep, because that's we're seeing each function is swappable, right? If I didn't use the GitHub CLI, it could be a REST API to GraphQL or cache data locally that I could plug in, and it would still work as long as I met the contract being the name of the function and the different parameters being set. So. But as far as Notebook LM, yeah, I don't know what kind of interfaces it has. I haven't looked, but yeah, Notebook LM is fantastic. Um, maybe that's coming. Maybe it's easy, but I will put that as an action item for me to take a look at because I think the Notebook LM is amazing. Okay, so it's 2:30. I'm going to go a little bit longer. If folks want to hang out, I hope you can. If you got to go and do stuff. No, it doesn't unless you want to reverse. How would that work? Thanks again. All right, Jason, thanks for joining. Rich, thanks for hanging. Everybody else, thank you for hanging. Let's take this to some few last demos, which I think are quite impressive. I'm sorry, but I think it's impressive, even though I'm biased. All right, what do we got? Yeah, this is really cool. That is a bunch that's really cool. We'll get to one of them at least. Okay, so somebody before mentioned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this piece, and I'm going to say I'm going to go back to the older, less accurate model. Thank you. Oh, Michael, how are you? Dude, I lost the bet again. I figured you weren't going to come, but thanks for dropping in. Good to have you. Yeah, Michael, I would love to chat with you at some point when you have time. Yeah, you're welcome to see how better to present these types of things. So I'm going to take out that LLM, going to run it up one more time. And what I'm going to say is use defink, try stuff. Now, here's where spelling matters because I didn't give it an ability to search my repos. So I will spell the name right. And I'm going to say close all issues. Now, this is again, right? This is why I do it in a try stuff where I don't care. And this is how I start to see the behaviors that happen and what I need to do to steer this in the correct way. So it went out, found all the issues, and then it just closed everything. I hope there's a round of applause. Not for me, but now all my issues are closed. How insane is that? Now, that's the whole point about the intent for AI, right? The functions are the same. The intention is driven by the LLM itself. Pretty impressive. Okay, so we have that all closed out. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go manual, and I'm going to say new issue. So I'm going to demonstrate, let's see, Paul says, but did it code all the solutions before? Well, in that case, it didn't, but glad you're here. I'll take you to the next step. So now we've talked a little bit about inside of GitHub, right? You can actually assign the GitHub Copilot code agent. So if I do a new issue, and let's say I do, I don't know, something ridiculous, create a PS1. I'm just make that as the title. And then in here, I'll get a little more descriptive and say, it needs to say hello, right? And then I can create this issue. And then I can come over here and you see this says assign to Copilot, right? And I think it even says it under here. I can choose who to assign this to. So I'm not going to do it at the moment. But what that does, well, yeah, we'll do it. What the heck? Assign to Copilot. And I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it straight away like this. You can do it either way. It doesn't matter. And you'll, now you can do this anyway. I can do optional stuff. So it's kind of cool. It gives you a little bit of a workflow. You can do additional prompts to drive it in certain kinds of directions. Maybe somebody else made an issue on your repo that said, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I might say, hey, go research ABC before you do this, or check out these modules, or check out this set of code in the database, in the code base, and do stuff. So I'm going to say assign, and we'll see, hopefully we get a pair of eyes. How awesome is that? Right? So that means that Copilot's been assigned. And then we can see it actually updated the issue and says WIP, another TLA. WIP means work in progress. That created a pull request. Okay. So when the Copilot gets assigned, it creates a pull request. And it does a bunch of things. It forks your library, it forks your code. No, it creates a branch, right? So you don't, when I just said, hey, go implement this, Copilot, go do this thing, it doesn't update your main branch, right? So it doesn't affect your running code. It puts it into it creates a separate branch and then starts working on it and then starts communicating about what it's doing. And it does all that through GitHub Actions, right? So now we can see that the Copilot is running. Right. So this is how people are starting to do, and this thing does it's an amazing set of prompts, right? What it does. And it can hook up to tons of different things. It knows how to interact with all of the stuff inside of your code base. It knows how to interact with GitHub, can interact with MCPs. You can customize the MCPs. You can put agents in this thing, the whole 9 yards and more. And the best part is, even if it messes up, it's all done in a branch. So at the end of the run, you can go and say, hey, what did this thing do? Oh, it messed everything up. My tests don't run. And you can delete the branch, or you can go, oh, okay, I can see what it did. And then you can reassign Copilot and say, hey, when you did ABC, consider doing XYZ and see if it actually solves the problem. Now you can see these little check marks just happen maybe. So it came up with a plan, came up with a to-do list, and now it's working through the to-do list to do what I asked it, right? The other thing that's really cool to bring attention to is you can say view session, I think. Yep. And then you can see how you can see its set of thinking. You can see some of the intermediate stuff it's doing, right? So it's creating a hello PS1. I may have already had that in the directory, but you can see how it's operating, what it's choosing to do, which is really useful. You can watch this, you can learn from it, how it's doing it. I use this also to let it build stuff, and then I look at the different prompts and I use those prompts. So that's really cool. That's the manual way. I don't like manual. Did I mention that yet? So now, I don't know why I called it that, but we will leave it. So let's go back to agents in PowerShell. Okay. Now, here I have, and I don't know, remember why I decided to use this as call it new Copilot issue. It's the same thing as new GitHub issue I showed you before. Name the function anything you want. Same, same thing we did, right? Issue, repo name, title, body, right? And I'm just doing a little stuff to capture more information. So we're able to create an issue using the GitHub CLI. So I'm going to do this all locally. And here comes some super magic. So one of the things that the GitHub CLI does is that you can use a GitHub issue edit, pass it the issue number, maybe it's 110, whatever we're going to be at. On the repo, I'm going to set it up as try stuff. And you can do magics like this. You can say add assignee at Copilot. So what you just saw me do where I said create a new issue, write it all up, and then I assign Copilot. You can do that with 2 lines of GitHub CLI. I don't want to remember how to do that. I don't want to remember I have to call new Copilot issue or set Copilot. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create a new agent. I'm going to add the tools I just created, and I'm going to run it headless, right? So we're not going to interact, and I'm just going to say, let Copilot work on count from 20 to 10 using PowerShell in defink, try stuff. Now, hopefully the models are going to be happy today. So just as a note, I see building agents like this, and it doesn't matter what framework you use. These are educated macros that keep going to school and keep learning. That's how that's the pattern, the other pattern that I'm seeing. Okay. So I could create new Copilot and set Copilot, and then I can make a third function that actually orchestrated these two with a different level of setting parameters. The beauty is I'm using this kind of language. This doesn't have to be English. I don't have to, it's a good time to experiment with NLP, and no matter where you work, whether it's ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini, um, but learning how to, you know, interact with this thing called AI and what you can say, what you don't have to say to make them simple. And you'll begin to see the progression as we go from 5.2 to GPT-6 and Gemini 3 Flash. And as we go into 2026 and these models get smarter and better, how you can actually communicate with it to get what you want done. What do we got here? How that works? Snooping on the request responses. Okay. And you have to assign this. Okay. Kenneth says, and you have to assign the same tools to NA every CLI session, right? NA? I'm not sure what NA means. But yeah, you have to, right? So these things have a repository. So the model has to know what repository you're working on. Yeah. And you have to assign the same tools. You don't have to. No. Well, so this, if you do line 61, this particular agent is using new Copilot issue and set Copilot. I could create another agent or append on this agent. I could do something like new agent. And I've done this in demos before. And I could say something like tools, get content, set content, and get child item, right? These are all built-in PowerShell commandlets. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that is an automated editor. So I've shown that before. I'll be showing it again, probably put out a small video on it. This alone. So that's what I'm going to do next week. I don't know if I'm going to show these 3 tools in play, but when you do something like, hey, I want to create a function called PS1 that does hello, if you just give these 3 tools in a prompt, it's going to create a local file because get content reads, set content writes, get child item lists, and I would give it instructions like always look at the current folder structure, see what files are there, see if it exists. If not, create it, and off to the races in 2 lines of code. 2-letter acronym. TLA, 2-letter acronym. Oh, you're fucking me up now there, Paul. Awesome. So Matt says, does PowerShell work on a Mac, and how is it different from just using built-in terminal? Does PowerShell? Yeah, PowerShell works on a Mac. It's different in the sense that it has different commands, has a different set of, it's in a different environment, so you can do different things on a Mac, and it runs on Linux as well. But basically, everything you're seeing here will run as you see it. Um, Hope that helps. Paul says the function definition looks to be akin to the AI agents internal prompt to the AI agents. Um, the function definition was defined by OpenAI, and everybody has used it because it works, because they did the research, they did the hard work to make it happen. Michael, NTD, I guess you're heading out. Thanks for dropping in. I really appreciate it. All right, Nick, excellent. And if you have any feedback, questions, or you want to chat where else this could apply, happy to talk about it. So back to Richard's thing, could we use this? Oh, wait, I can. Yeah. So the AI agents and yeah, the function calling, I didn't invent it. I just followed the OpenAI stuff, as did everybody in the industry since 2023. And it's incredible what they've come up with. It's absolutely incredible. Now, will they still be the Rosetta Stone over time? I have no idea. Doesn't matter. But they have definitely gotten us to this level, right? Um, so Richard says, could we use this process to help us create functions needed to make MS graph calls and SharePoint sites? Right now, I'm prompting GitHub Copilot to build these functions, but it's very iterative. Da, 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 da. Richard, that's exactly. Thank you for asking that question. That's exactly the imagination I was trying to plant a seed for. This can be used for anything. Okay. They've given us all the primitives. They've given folks primitives with Copilot. And the challenge is they haven't shown you how the patterns get really used. They haven't really opened it up to do what I'm showing here. Now, I'm not doing anything. I'm not, I can do certain kinds of coding and I think in a different way. Um, But things I'm showing here is exactly what Anthropic is showing, which is why coders can get so much out of it, because Copilot has to have guardrails on it. If it doesn't and it goes off the rails, Microsoft is going to get sued. It's going to have massive kinds of problems. So yeah, I would love ping me. I would love to kick the tires on the Graph QL stuff, the Graph API, and whatnot, and build up a set of commands and see if new aging should be able to handle 90%. And if it's got edge conditions, happy to flesh that out. I use Loca MCP server for the use case. Yep. And the MCP servers is basically the same kind of concepts. Depending on what you're doing in your company and what kind of level that you want to, how deep you want to get on this, I prefer not to use MCPs. I don't think they're going to last in the industry, and they're going to basically come down to Claude skills, and that's where you need to be. Yeah, talk to you soon, Michael. Sorry I didn't see that. Let's see, maybe I did. Well, we got a whole bunch of things. Thanks, Doug. Drop off. Okay, would you make separate agents? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. Would you make separate agent for doing stuff and others to check their else? Absolutely. Not only would I do that, Jarl, would I make separate agents, but I might even use different LLMs, right? So I might say, hey, build A, B, C, and D here, and then have Gemini, let OpenAI do it, and then have Gemini check it. And I'm going to take it. That's 2:43. Well, another 15 minutes. I'm going to be messing around with this anyway, because this just helps my thinking. So yes, I would have others. I would have different agents, different LLMs, and I would do that because I would want to see which LLMs, they're all tuned differently, right? Sometimes you'll hear something like, well, Anthropic's latest drop works great for writing prose and novels. Oh, the greatest next thing from Gemini is really great at doing, deep analysis on coding issues. Oh, the OpenAI stuff is really great at fixing these kinds of bugs. And that's the reason why when I use my invoke chat in the PSAI agent, right, I have a model, and if I hit control space, I show you the different ones I can use, right? So if I wanted to go to Google, I might get a whole bunch of these. Let's say I'm just going to use their Gemma, right? But the thing is, I can then come in and say, well, I want to use GitHub, and and I'm hitting control space because I'm looking up, they have their catalogs of what models they have. So I can look up GitHub and say, well, I want to use OpenAI, right? So what I'm showing here is that I can actually, the first line will actually do a prompt on that model and that provider, and the second one can do a prompt on that model and that provider, and I can mix and match these in a script anywhere I want. Mike Mendoza, do you think the Linux Foundation will change things for MCP? If so, how? Oh, absolutely. The Linux Foundation is going to change a lot of things for a lot of lots of different places. Now, will it break MCPs? I don't think it's going to break them, but MCPs are not the end game. Okay. They're really cool. They were built by Anthropic to attract the enterprise model so they can make billions of dollars. And when you sit there and you build an MCP server, basically you're just putting a little thin, light wrapper. What you're seeing here, if I do something like under my hyphen tools, I have something called register tool in PowerShell in my PSAI, right? This is the same thing as building a similar register. This is similar to building an MCP. So I do it on get date. That's built in. Dump it to JSON, and that's a function. That's a function definition. That's an MCP, right? So that's really easy to now in different programming languages, they have some things that do similar things. I wrote register tool before the rest of the big folks were building these things. They were building out the infrastructure, gave me time to build out these really useful set of tools, I believe. I have something called register MCP tool. Now it'll look almost the same. And let's do a, oh, I have it on here. Do not compress. Okay, that works exactly with an MCP tool in Claude. Okay, or in any client in Visual Studio Code, Copilot. They do it a little bit differently. They use something like an input schema. They wrap certain levels. They require certain things to be here that don't have to be in the function calling. It's the same concept, and it's how you call something. This is remote procedure calls. That's all they are, and it's how you wrap it to make it work. So the Linux Foundation is going to have an impact. Thank you, Richard, for coming. Paul, replacing the Terraform AZ provider uses AZ CLI to deploy. So many functions the same. Bingo, Paul. Thank you for that's exactly. Thank you for saying that. That's the seed again. Another seed that I was planting. This can be used anywhere, and now you could actually hand us off to somebody and go. You can practice and say, "Hey, spin me up a VM that does blah blah blah." Depending on the instructions you give to new agent, you can actually that becomes your template. That becomes how you steer it and say, "Well, make sure you do A, B, C, and D," right? And they don't even know it, and then the model figures all that good stuff. Anything can be abstracted. Any app, any agent, anything. That's correct, Kenneth. That is the beauty of this new world, right? And we're not even in 2026 yet. In fact, in Claude Skills, one of the cool things that they have is something called a skills creator. So you can actually, like I'm showing here, where you can do a new agent in Claude. Once you load up the Claude CLI, you can actually say, create a skill that does A, B, C, and D, and it will create a skill that it can use. So we are that much closer to doing self-healing and self-evolving LLMs. That's crazy. The LLM doesn't get evolved, but the mechanism around it is what is going to. So now you can create a bunch of different skills, have it create the skills. You don't even have to build it. You just tell it what you want. And then all of a sudden, Claude CLI becomes more intelligent and more capable. Paul, Doug, any thoughts on adding logging to the module? Oh, great question. Yep. So if you do something like this, agent equal, let's do new agent, right? And I'm just going to do some basics, right? So now I have a $agent variable, and I will say agent, and we'll do a start conversation, and I will use my favorite capital of France. For those who've been here before, my apologies, I have not upgraded. And then I can say Spain. Now you can see here, notice it gave me the capital of Spain. Why? Because I have memory, right? I just keep track of my prompt, the response from the agent, my prompt again, the response of the agent, and we're all good to go, right? That's all memory is. Drop in next Tuesday, and I'm going to show you exactly how that works. Pull the curtain back. There is no magic. So whenever all these companies go, hey, we have this new capability. No, you don't. Yeah, you do, but you're basically using these fundamentals. Okay, so now I'm going to say Italy, Iceland, and Japan. Now notice I'm not even telling it what, but I should get all the capitals. And we'll get to the logging in a second. Boom. That's because I'm passing back the entire conversation we just had to the model, and the model is now inferring, oh, you must be still talking about capitals. This is good news and bad news. Now, let me break out of this. And then in $agent, right, I can say .get messages. And there's all the message. That's the conversation we had. That's your memory. You want to see it better? And then I use this as a, oops. And then if you want to see it, I can even do pretty print. I even set up a system message, which you didn't see me do because it's part of the tool set. And there's the user, there's the assistant, there's the user. And then all of this, right? If I go back to get message, I keep them all, I think, in a hash table. Is that right? Oops. Yeah. So I keep it in a hash table, but then I can dump to JSON, right? And I use DuckDB, or you can use SQLite or Postgres, and then you can just dump this into a database. That becomes your logging. Hope that answers that question. Richard says, that's exactly what I thought. You are building an MCP. Well, I'm building an MCP, but they're all MCPs. They're just different tweaks, right? It's all function calling. It's different JSON schemas. It's how you can interact. It's Claude skills. It's the whole 9 yards. What if you entered something like New York? For which thing? Oh, good question. So let's go back to agent. I'm going to make a new one. And we will do a start conversation. What is the capital? So that's exact. So what's cool is this is how easy it is to start experimenting with the LLMs do. What is the capital of New York? And see what they do. And I'm happy to be using OpenAI, but you can do whatever you want. And New York is Albany. And then I can say something like France. And hopefully I'll get Paris. There you go. So it actually understands. Hey, Paul, thanks for dropping in. Appreciate it. Yeah, Google Anti-Gravity, those were the windsurf guys, right? Windsurf was supposed to be picked up by Anthropic, and then they bowed out of the acquisition. I think it was Windsurf. And then Windsurf folks went over to Google and they built Anti-Gravity, and Anti-Gravity is taking it to the next level of doing things with agents and having the entire environment where you are driving the agentic, watching the agents do their thing, and you're tweaking and doing whatnot. Yeah. Now, I didn't get to the demo, but this whole thing here where it says new Copilot and set Copilot, if you remember, I did it all manually. In one line of code, I can now actually say, this will actually create an issue in the repo that I want, and it will kick off the Copilot in the background. And that's exactly what the same thing that you can do here in the, where is it? Anyway, inside, I can't believe I don't remember where it is now, but inside Visual Studio Code, right? You can actually kick off the background Copilot stuff right from inside the IDE. Take care, guy. See you next week. See you next week, Wandy. Great one. And so now I can be anywhere on the command line, right? So I can wrap this in a function, right? I can wrap the new agent with those calls and this, and I can make it so that I sit here and go anywhere from my command line or from any script. I can say new Copilot agent, and I can go do this and this and this in A, B, C, D, right? And now I can just spin up all these puppies. Or I can actually read it from a file. Maybe I'm keeping track of a bunch of ideas in a text file and saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And in the file alone, I could just have the first part of it could be the repo, defink / try stuff, space, and then a bunch of stuff that describes the issue. And I can say, hey, read that file, give it to the AI, and let it figure out which repos need to have what issues and who needs to set the Copilot. And now I just hit that button at 2:00 in the afternoon, and I come back tomorrow to see what it builds. That's just one idea of many that you can do with this kind of an approach. I don't need to be inside Visual Studio Code. I don't need to have Claude CLI working. That's the way. It's one another major option that you can have to do. I don't have to spin up LangChain. I don't have to install Python, right? So if you're already working with PowerShell, you're good to go. Now, I know it's late. Last one I just want to talk about, which is because I think it's fascinating. There's two parts that are really fascinating. All right. Let me see what happens when I fold all this good stuff. There we go. This is crazy. So we got a few people left. Excellent. Thanks for hanging in there. 90 minutes. This is great. So inside of GitHub, you can do something called, you can do a GitHub, you can search the commits, right? So all the commits that are going on, you can say GitHub search commits. You can say, I want it by committer date. So for example, I can say, doing the greater than sign 2025 0801. Thanks, Rich. Matt, I use all the things, but I like staying in PowerShell, less ceremony, more essence. So you can pass in and say, go against a repo, right? So I'm going to go against my PSAI suite, and we'll just take this out and do it at the command line. So I'm just going to run this as normal. So I want to look in PSA. That's how quick it was. Look in PSAI suite. Anything greater than 2025 0801. That's the date filter. And there's the repo. And then the data, there you go, right? So those are all the commits that I've done in that repo since August, right? Cool. I mean, that's a hell of a thing to have to look through, kind of annoying. So what's really weird, really cool, okay, is I don't even know why I started looking at this. I was like, okay, I want to just be able to come up with a better way to review stuff I've done, whether it's since August or the last 2 weeks. I like to look at like, what did I do this week in these different repos? So you grab the search commits, and then I have 3 different prompts: prompt data to HTML, prompt data to Markdown, prompt data to JSON. Okay, these are kind of involved, but it's not the worst thing in life. The first one, prompt to HTML. I'm going to pass in this data that I got from whatever repo I was looking at for that date, and we're going to kick this off so we don't have to wait for it to run. It should be, oh, maybe not. Did I get rid of that? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, so much for that. But what we will do is, oh, that was the good one too. Bummer. Come on, what are you talking about? Oh, both of them? What am I doing? Ugh, I have this in a different folder. What is this? Prompt HTML. Yeah, I said don't use it. I thought. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that data, this data that I just searched for, and I'm going to pipe it into my invoke chat completion, right? And I'm going to use OpenAI 4.1, as you can see on line 138. And so I'm going to take the data and I want it to apply those prompts. I'm going to run this one more. I have to just comment this out. Let's see if we can do this. Wow, I didn't think it would actually. Let's try it again. Okay, now it's cooking. So I'm only going to do 2 of them. I'm going to do prompt data to Markdown, and this may not work because I think I put it in a summary file. We'll just see what happens. And I have a prompt to JSON so that, yeah, okay, summaries. So we're going to do this, and where am I? This is what happens when you move things around Workflow Engine. Okay, so let me just create a thing called summaries. Now, what I would, if I was a good coder, I would have checked to see if that existed, and I would have made it the PowerShell do it. So all I'm doing is I'm going to take the same data that we just saw, this data, and I'm going to pipe it in and give it a markdown, a prompt, and say, you're generating a repository change summary from GitHub commits, summarize what was shipped, improved, fixed, removed. Here's the scope, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm going to give it another one for the JSON, and that time it worked. And I'm going to give this one, here's the JSON, you're generating a structured repository change summary from GitHub, same thing, summarize this, this, and this. And then I just said, here's the schema. that I want it to look like. Now, I didn't write this by hand. I asked Copilot to generate the schema based on what I was discussing, right? So what this does is it creates two files, takes that same data, creates two files, and let's see if we can render the markdown. Control K B. There we go. So I just ran those things. It looked at my repo and I just typed that in by accident. Remember, it took this data, right? And I piped it into a LLM and I said, here's what I want. I want to see the shipped improvements fixes. So I run this on a regular basis against my repos, and then I get these types of summaries. Perfect thing to send off to a coworker, management, put it back in the repo so we can keep track. Now, why do I want to do the JSON? Because it may be something I want to use for downstream systems. So this is exactly the same data, different prompt, and it generated these chain sets and how it related. Added a model lister for providers, introduced raw switch, and then it gave me all the different commits that I can actually look. And it even gives me clickable links that I can go in and see what actually happened, right? This is all from the same set of data, and it figured out that these ridiculous things are actually commit pieces for that particular repo. Glad you liked it. So the question was it Alan? Yeah. PowerShell runs inside of everything, right? So it's running inside, I have it set up as my console inside of VS Code. And when I run it in the terminal, when I run the terminal up, I have it run there as well. And you can have whatever you want. I have my Raspberry Pi set up, right? My SSH stuff. I can use Windows PowerShell or PWSH. So that's what these terminals are all about. You can run any type of REPL, read, eval, print loop, which is Python, Bash, Z Shell, PowerShell, Emacs, all that kind of stuff. Hey, thanks for joining. Appreciate it. So this is just now, that wasn't using agents, but you can begin to see how I would then take this whole thing, wrap it in agents so I can say, hey, get me a list of all the downstream JSON stuff that I need to do to send to XYZ. And by wrapping this stuff in functions, I could take it to that next level. It's like drinking water from a fire hydrant. Well, yeah, I apologize if it's too much. Back in 23, when I pushed out the first PSAI, when I published it, I was actually waking up for 6 months before and 6 months after at 3 o'clock in the morning and checking my phone going, what the fuck is going on in AI space? Because, OpenAI was the first one to drop and they were the only one. Then all of a sudden Google's coming on board and Anthropic is doing something. And I was like, oh my God, what? And it was before things like we weren't using terms like prompt engineering. We weren't using terms like hallucinating. We were like, look at what you can do with this thing. And I would wake up going, oh my God, I'm drowning here. Never going to happen. So yeah, figuring out how this stuff works or being able to put some of these things together, it will get easier and easier and easier. But you will feel like you're underwater. Don't despair. Keep pushing forward because the results are absolutely worth it. And I say this a lot in my presentations. AI is not going to replace you. Someone who knows how to use AI will. I can walk in and drop this. I can build this from memory. I mean, for me, it's right. There's no code in here. It's just a bunch of prompts, and I can generate the prompts in any environment. I can sit in ChatGPT on the web and generate the prompts. And I don't have to use my PSAI stuff. I can go, oh, you're using LangChain? Okay, I can figure out pretty much how the agents work, this, that, the other, and I can knock this out for folks, right? So people that are going to come into companies and do this kind of stuff, and we're not even in 2026. And I'm just going to look again. Let's see if we can do the get open router. So I just sit here so I know that Gemini, Google's going to drop a new Gemini version today. Once it hits, right, I'll just do an invoke chat. I'll change up the model, Google, and then I'll just look for it here. It'll be something like Gemini 3.5, 3.0 Flash, and I'm working with a new model. And I can sit here all to my heart's content saying, What is the capital of New York? What is the capital of this? Right? Let's see what the flash does. What do you think this does? fib_fn, non-recursive. Now this is a techie, so I'm a nerd swiping. Um, that's a Fibonacci function I'm looking for, and I don't want it to be recursive. So I want it to use a loop and not recursion. Gemini Flash 2.5 is older. It's a little bit slower. I'm using it in an inference. Oh, I'm actually using it against Google. So it may not work. I don't know if I paid my bill yet. There you go. And now it just came back with like 55 examples. And here's the iterative version, so the non-recursive version, and it lays out the code. If I want to, we'll just do it. I can do exactly the same thing. And this is how nimble and agile and flexible these tools are, that I can now switch from using Google Gemini Flash to using GitHub's Open API version. And there we go. Okay. So when people go, oh my God, there's a new model out, I got to change. I'm like, sounds like you don't know how to code. You should be able to change between model. Now, your whatever you built may not work, because when you switch to a new model, you need to do different kind of prompt engineering, because not all models are going to give you what you think you want. And that takes us into the conversation of evals and error analysis, which is we're not going to talk about. But this is what you can do. And you should be able to do some of this stuff in Python and TypeScript out of the box, or Go or Rust or whatever language you're dealing with. Have you done, Rich asks, have you done diffs on the outputs on different models? Absolutely. I've written small eval. So in other words, right. So if I take the model, well, you can do diffs, but the diffs only matter based on the context of the prompt that you're doing. But I can take this, comma, Google, comma, Anthropic, right? Take this thing, and then I can pipe it to invoke chat completion model, and whatever it's dollar underscore, right? Because I'm taking all those from the array, and then I can say my prompt is capital of New York, right? And I can run that, and it will take each one of those different providers and models, and it'll give me output that I can look at. In addition, because I'm working in PowerShell, if I throw parallel on this, I can now do them in parallel, so I'm not waiting for them to sequentially. Coming is dead. I'm not sure. Coding is dead. Ah, there you go. Yeah, typing syntax is not the future. So figuring out a way not to be in that is what you got to do. So this is the other thing that I'll just show real quick. Oops, did I just do that? Apologies. The other thing that's interesting is that, let's see, we're in the invoke chat completion. Let's go back to GitHub. I have a raw and include elapsed time. So you can actually see what's going on between the messages being sent, the model being used, and then I can see that that took 2 seconds to complete. So I capture, and again, I just dump this all into JSON, and then I save it in DuckDB, and then I can sit there and just kick these off across umpteen different models, and then I can then compare and say, oh, who's a good one? I think I have my Anthropic up to snuff. So you can do Anthropic, and I can say, take a look at Haiku 4.5, right? And then I can actually do comparisons of the text. So as you can see, they come back and they are giving all kinds of comparison information, whereas the OpenAI doesn't. So I've just compared Claude Haiku 4.5 on that same prompt to OpenAI's response. And then I can say, well, which one do I want? Do I want all this extra information, or do I want succinct Python code? And it all depends what you're trying to do. Jarrell, the translating business needs to agents managers might be a job. Absolutely will be a job. Understanding how to communicate. That's why, I say learning how to talk to the LLM is fundamental. The skills MDB can be tested this way as well. Absolutely. So learning how to talk to LLMs is the new job, right? Learning how to handle agents across different things is the new job. If you're typing in one character at a time to create the future, I think your job is over, right? Syntax is no longer the flex. Um, and it's one of the reasons I built this was because I needed to figure out the knobs and dials and go, well, what can I do with this thing? And I don't want to sit there inside of LangChain and all this nonsense and have 7,000 classes and then, oh, we can do this and recover and then retry and then run on cloud A or cloud B. I don't care about any of that crap. I need to be at the nuts and bolts. But yeah, being able to listen to what the customer wants, what's going to be the outcome, and then iterate quickly to provide solutions is crazy. And then you'll see next week as I pull the curtain back on how to build an agent inside of PowerShell. I'll show you how to do it in PowerShell, but the concept is across any language that you're using or whatever. And then you can then start to make the leap and go, oh, that's how Claude CLI works. Oh, that's how, and they've got some really cool shit and they make life really easy. But the magic is not in the AI interaction. But they make it easier. So when I'm inside code, if I ask a question, right, Copilot here inside of Visual Code knows I have these three files open, and it will glean the context from these files being open. It gleans the fact that if I ask a question, that I'm in a markdown file as compared to being in a PS1 file. And based on what I'm prompting, it'll know, oh, I need to do this on this file or I need to do it on that file. And that's all decided by the agents inside of the LLM, which is what I was showing at the beginning of all this. So Skills MD, yep, can be tested. Everything with a prompt can be tested this way. And in fact, if you really want to make be worth your salt, um, not only do you need to translate what you're doing, but you need to be able to figure out how to write evals and compare these different outcomes from the prompts that you're doing, which may be numerous in the application you're working, so that when you upgrade, you can go, oh, let me switch out Anthropic with the new API 7.3 and run a bunch of prompts, see the outputs, and do comparisons without having to touch your code and go, oh, it's not really worth going there. Or we have to update our prompts to do blah, blah, blah. You will have prompt rot. Okay. When you build your system in 3 months, if you're upgrading, your prompts will no longer be necessary, or maybe it's overdone, or maybe it's a little too ambiguous in certain ways, and that the model is going to make certain decisions. But that becomes our new job. So Richard says, so are you saying what you teach next week will apply to N8N cursor for development purposes? Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say it applies. It gives you a peek behind the curtain. So N8N and cursor, right? So if I come in here, close all, and thanks for everybody for hanging out, man. We're almost on 2 hours. I'm fine with it. And I appreciate the folks that are still here. So if I'm sitting inside here and I say, create a greet, can you see this on the bottom, or should I make it bigger? We'll make it a little bigger. I'm on the bottom right. I'm using Grok Code Fast 1. It's out. So I'm going to go to GPT-4.1. So what I'm doing here is very similar to how Windsurf works, Cursor, and N8N. N8N is a little bit different animal because it's not really an editor. But this is how agentic coding techniques work. So I'm going to say create a greet, and I'm going to just in a PS1. So when I hit enter, okay, it's actually kicking off things like it's looking at all the different things in the code base, okay, and then it created a greet one, and there you see it. When I said before that I can do a new agent, and I can, in the hyphen tools parameter, I can pass in get child item, which lists files, get content, which reads files, and set content, which writes files, right? All basic built-ins in PowerShell. I can do the same prompt and get the same result. Now, they do a bunch of extra stuff because they'll look at the code base differently, blah, 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 blah. And the cool part is people actually have reversed or were able to pull out the prompts that all the different major Cursor, N8N, Visual Studio Code, Windsurf, all the system prompts they use. I can drop that same system prompt into my instructions, and now I'm like a mini Cursor. I hope that explains it. And we will go through a bunch of that next Tuesday, and I'll pull the curtain back. And it's important to see that this is not magic, okay? Because it looks like it's overly complex. And the reason it is overly complex is this is how Microsoft makes money. This is how all these folks make money. And I don't blame them for making money. But I also like to know how the magic trick is done. In terms of adding the Anthropic API and subscriber line, what? So what? What? Yeah. So the way you said, yeah. So I have basically I work it off the way those folks do. They set environment variables for the Anthropic keys, the Google keys, all that. So I have like 15 keys in my profile so that all my stuff works. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a standard Python, TypeScript, Unix approach that's been done for decades. So I just followed the same thing. I used to be a Unix coder back before most of you were probably born. And I wasn't using punch cards at the time. But yeah, so this is I hope you found it. I didn't hit all my examples because I just, I tend to like to have a whole bunch of things to show and I never get to everything. And so I missed some demos. Yeah, man, this one's good, which I'm not going to show. GitHub help. That's awesome. Yeah, but maybe we'll show that another time. Question from Richard. Could you use your perplexity so you don't need to use the API keys? I'm not sure. Say a little more about that, Richard. We can do another hour. We can do it not today, but we can do another couple hours at a future date. And please feel free to find me on the socials or talk to me through the meetup. You can do it. You can post a comment or send me a direct comment. If you want to see something, let me know. It helps me figure things out, and it's great to chat about these things with people with like minds. Let me just look if I can do get chat providers. I have Perplexity here. So Perplexity is one of the providers I support, and you have to use the key because they charge money for, anytime you, glad you liked the session. Yeah, the stuff's fucking crazy. Don't get me started. But yeah, you can use Perplexity as well. Again, Anthropic and Google, for whatever reason, they decided to fuck around with the APIs that they use. They deviated from OpenAI's approach. I think they just wanted to try to create a moat and they fucked up. And they didn't think people were gonna whatever. But the rest of them, DeepSeek, Google, Grok, GROQ, XAI, which is the other Grok, GROK, and Mistral, they all follow what they did. So building what I built here, while it's conceptually challenging, but if you understand design patterns and whatnot, and if you saw it when you see the code, download PSAI suite, take a look at the code. It's not as complicated. There's no freaking magic tricks behind it, and it's pretty straightforward. And as different providers come online, you can easily add one. You drop it into a folder, a PS1, and it all works. These are techniques I've been doing since the 1990s, and I'm not the one, and I'm not the only one out there doing it. Right? There are people orders of magnitude smarter than me. Uh-oh. Matt's got a PS1. Yep, PowerShell 1 file. That's how you create a script. Right? You save it as a PS1. If you're writing in Python, you save it to .py. If you're writing in TypeScript, you save it to .ts. Right? So those extensions tell the system what you're doing. So yeah, this shit is fucking crazy. It's a fire hose, and I'm telling you, we're not even at the middle of. We're 2 weeks from the end of the year, and Gemini is going to drop some stuff today or tomorrow, or Google is their next model, which I think is going to be a banger. And they're all bangers, right? Every week, it's like now we're at the point where every large language model that comes out is like, oh, it beat the last one and it beat the competition. Yeah, we're going to see that from now till eternity. So that's why doing evals, that's why having providers like this, so you can tap into any model, is so important, in my opinion, right? Because it's not going to stop. And there's going to be, DeepSeek and KIMI, which is another one, coming online and doing stuff and making stuff available to us. And they're going to use the same REST API. So having this kind of a structure to be able to plug these things in and try them out, so you can mix, match, do whatever you got to do. And if you're not doing it, somebody knows how to do it, will. And they're just going to bring more to the table, right? All right. Glad you liked it, Jarrell. Excellent. Even thought I am not a programmer. Well, I can tell you, man, you should tap. almost every I do this all the time, too many hours a day, and you should tap into me every once in a while because I sit here and I shake my head and I go, this fucking thing doesn't even need me. If I can sit there and I can have something that says get issues and get PRs and look at other repos on the internet, like let this thing go out and figure out what needs to be built. Why does it need me? Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Ghislaine. Hope to see folks next week. If you think this was good, I think next week's going to be as good. Uh-oh. You're not lowly sysadmin. This was informative. Thank you. Ben, the fact that you even came to watch this, you're not a lowly system admin. You might be doing that kind of work, but this is stuff to definitely pay attention to because, um, yeah, it's going to make you better. It's going to make you smarter. And if you learn how to wield these tools, good shit. And we're going to show you how next week. We're going to show you how the every week gets more crowded. Well, I think I think I know one of the reasons why they got a little more crowded this week, um, but yeah, there's a lot to learn, but if it's like going to the gym, right? First you get in there, you're lifting the 5 pound weights, and you might have to do that for 2, 3 weeks, and you learn how to, do posture and all that kind of stuff. Be a lazy. And the only reason I write this shit is because I'm lazy. Why did I write register tool? Register. So I can take any PowerShell function. And I didn't think I had any major breakthrough. I didn't want to keep rewriting. If I changed the parameters or changed the name, I didn't want to have to keep doing it by hand. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I just wrote a tool. That's just the way I work, right? If I start doing things over and over again, I said, let me automate that. It may take a leap in thinking, but yeah, being lazy is great because then you just look the way to automate shit. And the reason I think it's more crowded this week is so Jeffrey Snover, I posted this on LinkedIn that I'm going to do this today, and he retweeted it. So I think I got what I would call the Snover bump, which is awesome. Anyway, yeah, and you should pay attention. Jeffrey Snover is writing blogs more and more about AI and whatnot. He's not only talking about the technology, but he's talking about the financing of it. He's got some, you got to remember he was a technical fellow at Microsoft, so he was way high up. I think he was the CTO of a bunch of different things, functional units, FUs, love them, and he totally awesome. And he was in the, he would talk to Satya Nadella. I think he was back in the days when Bill Gates was there, and he went through when Ballmer was there. So he's been in all those deep discussions. Blammer. Did you intend to spell it Blammer? I like that name. But he was all okay, but that's a pretty good, interesting way. So he's been at those top level meetings. How do you do build products that are going to be needed and impact the world and make money for Microsoft? And then I think in the last year or two, I think he punched out of Microsoft in the last year or so. He's been at Google as a technical fellow, so he's watched what Google, and now I think he's leaving Google. But now he's talking about the finance and how everything's getting financed for AI and how the whole game's played. But he completely believes that AI needs to be your teammate and you need to figure it out. Is what the Stover bump? Yeah, I don't know for the win. What? So yeah, lots of cool stuff. I've been responding to Jeffrey Snover's stuff. And again, he retweeted or he reposted my stuff on LinkedIn, which was great. And so he's seen the stuff that I've done. He's been watching me do PowerShell for almost 20 years. So yeah, lots of cool stuff, things to learn. Matt T is 100% Mac. That's fine. Go for it, Matt. Oh, too many TLAs, Matt. Sorry about that. Yeah, yeah. Wait till we start talking about locks and K-locks and TDD with the BDDs. Yeah. And if we started PWS, it runs fine on Mac, runs fine on Linux. Yeah, and I build all my stuff and I do my testing across a matrix, right? So I test across Mac OSs and Linux as well as Windows. So all this stuff I know the basics run on those different pieces inside of GitHub Actions. Um, Yeah, whole new world. And again, you don't have to choose PowerShell. What I'm talking about here, I'm showing you an easy way to get into it with very little friction. But all the big players are doing similar things. You may have to do extra coding. You may have to, they don't have exactly the pieces that I'm talking about, but this is the future, and 26 is going to be even more fun. All right, folks, I will let you go. Enjoy your Tuesday. Hope to see you next week. What are functional units? Awesome. Alan, what are functional units? Excellent, Kenneth. Yeah, Ken, drop me a note if you want. We can chat about other aspects as they come up if you want. So basically, when you do a thing like get date inside of so talking to functional units, when you talk about get date in PowerShell, right? That's a commandlet, CMDLET. It's not a command. Jeffrey Snover named them commandlets. At first, when you can do a function like I want to do function test, right? And I can type, I just built a function that I can run, right? Um, they were thinking of calling that piece, the function test, a functional unit. The problem is that functional unit, if you go down to the acronym, it's an FU, and FU doesn't play well, right? People might interpret that as something else. How many FUs did you do today? So, and Snover tells that story for quite a while, and he wrote up why he chose commandlet over command, and they didn't, and why they chose not to call them functional units. And I think it's a funny story, but it's also an insight of how you want to name things so they're remembered, which is a whole different marketing discussion. Well, thanks everybody. I really appreciate you hanging out this long. If you have any questions, you can drop them now. Send it to me privately, any which way you can, and I'm happy to chat about it. And I hope to see most of you folks next week before the holidays. All right. Later. You're welcome, Alan.